Maria, my mother said she wants to talk to you about inheritance, so call her, my husband said to me a few days after my father passed away. What? Why? My father had passed away just a few days earlier, and I was still grieving. My husband seemed indifferent to it all. Why is your mother talking about my father's inheritance? I don't know. Just call her tomorrow. My husband seemed so detached from it all. When did he become like this? My name is Maria. I'm a 48-year-old company employee. I quit my job for a while, but started working again after my child-rearing years were over. My husband Paul is the same age as me and we work at the same company. We got married when we were 22 years old and had our son George the following year. We've spent half our lives together. We used to be comfortable around each other, but lately I've been noticing more and more of his unpleasant side. I was focused on raising our son, but when George was 3 years old, my husband suddenly said, "I'm quitting my job." When I asked him why, he said he didn't like his boss and that he should be making more money. He said he wanted to quit because he saw his colleagues leaving for better jobs. My husband is easily influenced by others, and this bad habit of his was showing again. The result of his job change wasn't great. He got a slight raise, but he didn't fit in with his new colleagues and found the work boring. He used to be more lively when we worked together, but at some point he became dull. My husband's only pleasure seems to be going back to his parents' house. His parents' house is about a 30-minute drive away, so we go there often on weekends. At first I went with him, but since it was too frequent, I stayed home with George more often. There are many of my husband's classmates in the neighborhood of his parents' house, and I think he relies on them because he doesn't have any close friends at work. I've told him several times that we should go out as a family or play with George instead of just going to his parents' house all the time, but he refused because George doesn't like him. We hardly ever went out as a family. Instead, we often went out with my parents and George. My father bought real estate during the bubble economy and had passive income from it. He also worked as an ordinary company employee, so I think we were relatively well off. My parents always came to pick us up in their car when we went out. I thought my in-laws didn't want to see George because they didn't invite him over or complain about it, but it seems they like their son more than their grandson. That kind of life continued until George was in junior high school. It became less frequent when he became a junior high school student, but when I told my father about it, he seemed sad. My father bought a high-rise condominium that was being built near where we lived. When I asked him why, he said that you could see fireworks from the room and seemed excited about it. He remembered how impressed George was when they went to see fireworks before and thought that if they could see fireworks from the condominium, George would be happy too. When my parents started living in the high-rise condominium, George was already a high school student, but when I told him about my father's idea, he immediately visited his grandparents to see the fireworks. Since then, they have gathered there on the day of the fireworks festival every year. My mother said that my father who said that someday he would drink alcohol with George while watching fireworks was cute. My mother was originally weak in health and died after a while. It was sad even though I had prepared for it. However, on the day of the fireworks festival every year, we visited my father's place with George without fail. When George turned 20 years old and drank alcohol with my father for the first time on the day of the fireworks festival, my father was really happy. My husband only went once at first. The next time he met my father was at my mother's funeral. My husband is still easily swayed, and when the topic of cleaning the house comes up around him, he suddenly starts cleaning. When someone says they went to a popular spot with their child, he suddenly wants to go with us even though he rarely goes out with us. Well, I don't think he's a bad person at heart, and I've accepted it because we can live relatively comfortably. But things have changed. My father collapsed and passed away at work. His colleagues called an ambulance for him, but he passed away at the hospital. He had an acute myocardial infarction, and if he had collapsed at home, he might have been left there for days. Maybe it was better that he collapsed in a public place. My husband and George also came to see him, but they didn't make it in time. We finished the funeral somehow while grieving. Then an unexpected person spoke to me. "Maria, are you okay?" It was my mother-in-law who said that. I didn't have much contact with her, but I thought my in-laws were worried about me. That high-rise condominium is still worth a lot because it's in a redevelopment area. You can get a considerable amount of money if you sell it now. I was stunned by her unexpected words, and my mother-in-law continued. Only Maria will inherit the estate. It's good that you don't have to worry about money for the time being. I didn't have the slightest idea about inheritance. Yet these people were worried about inheritance and approached me. I tried to suppress my anger as much as possible and told my in-laws. I'll think about it slowly. Then I asked them to leave. Then my husband asked me, can that high-rise condominium really be sold for such a high price? The redevelopment plan had been discussed for some time, and my father had said that a large commercial facility would be built there and other condominiums would be built as well. But when I heard my husband ask such a question now, I was annoyed. A few days after my father's funeral, my mother said she wants to talk to you about inheritance. My husband said, what? Why is your mother talking about my father's inheritance? I was a little annoyed that this was not enough information. I don't know. Anyway, call her tomorrow. My anger also rose against my husband who said so. The next day, I couldn't bring myself to call my mother-in-law, but she called me instead. You're going to sell the high-rise condominium, right? Should I ask my acquaintance about a real estate agent? She suddenly said such a thing. I never said anything about selling it. When I said so, it's better to do this kind of thing quickly. Let me know anytime because I'll help you. She hung up the phone. After that, when I told my husband about it when he came home. What does Maria want? Do you plan to live there? He asked me. The distance from the station is a disadvantage. Well, maybe selling it is reasonable. I said so. After that, my mother-in-law kept asking if we hadn't sold it yet or introduced us to real estate agents, so I told her clearly. I also have friends who are real estate agents. Don't worry about me, this is my problem. But she said. What are you talking about? We're family. Ask us anything. She said that and started calling me frequently even though she hadn't called me before. Anyway, if we put it up for sale, maybe my mother-in-law will stop attacking us. So I decided to consult with a friend who is a real estate agent and proceed with the sale. When my mother-in-law called and my husband came home from work after that, I told them we were going to sell it and the phone attacks from my mother-in-law stopped for now, so I'm relieved. 3 months later, I was contacted that a buyer had been found. It was said that it would be worth quite a bit, but it was beyond my imagination. Then, when my husband returned home from work, he suddenly said, so how much did it sell for in the end? I hid my confusion as to why my husband knew and told him a lie. I still don't know. It's not selling at all. He started watching TV with a sound. I didn't know if he was interested or not. The next day, it was Saturday and I was relaxing when the intercom rang. When I went out to see who it was my parents-in-law. Paul? Your father-in-law and mother-in-law are here, but what's going on? When I called out to my husband like that, he invited his parents in. Then my mother-in-law handed me a piece of paper. When I looked down at it with suspicion, it was a divorce paper. I was confused and my mother-in-law said, Maria, how long are you going to live off Paul? This child has been coming home a lot because he's tired of living with you. There were too many things to point out and I didn't know what to say. For the time being, I asked my husband. What do you mean? Does Paul think so too? He nodded. I didn't understand the meaning of this conversation that had never come up before. My husband continued. If we get divorced and split the money, we can live for a while, can't we? My parents-in-law also nodded. A friend of mine who is a real estate agent said that the high-rise condominium sold for a considerable amount of money. If that's the case, we'll get a lot of money and we'll be able to live for a while even if we get divorced. What is this person? They're unbelievable people. While I was stunned, my husband began filling out the divorce papers. My husband really intends to get divorced. Do my parents-in-law want my husband to come back to their house, or do they hate me? They must have whispered something to my husband and he must have been swayed again. So they want me to get divorced and take the money from the high-rise condominium that has been inherited by me. My husband must have thought it was a good idea and it made me sad, but he probably thinks that he can get away with getting an inheritance himself if he gets divorced. However, inherited property is not subject to property division. Knowing this, I snatched away the divorce papers and filled them all out on the spot. When I said that I would take care of it, my husband said, "It's too much trouble, so just do it. And I'm leaving here so Maria can live here," he said as he left with his parents. He said he would come back later for only his large luggage and left pulling his suitcase. They must have planned with their parents-in-law and waited for the right time to leave. Since they are preparing to leave home properly, there is nothing more to say to my husband. I called my son George on the phone and told him about this incident. "What? What's that all about?" George was angrier than me, but after thinking about something. "Just wait a little bit before submitting the divorce papers," he said. I asked him why, but he didn't answer, so there must be something he's thinking about, so I decided to wait for George's call. A week later, George came to my house. They were thinking about this, he said, taking out several photos. It was my parents-in-law's house. However, it was not the old-fashioned house that had been there until now, but a new one, so I didn't know until he told me. When I asked what it meant, he said that his university friend lived near my parents-in-law's house and took these photos. Moreover, my parents-in-law had been boasting about it in the neighborhood, saying that they had recently rebuilt it. George's friend had fun playing detective and took these photos. And this. George threw another photo on the table. There was a woman I didn't know with my husband. My friend was having fun with surveillance, and he said he took this kind of photo and followed them. Next, there was a photo of my husband and a woman I didn't know entering a hotel with their arms around each other. There were also photos of the two of them entering my parents-in-law's house together. I was stunned. Was my husband cheating? Perhaps he had been going to my parents' house so often to meet this woman? Moreover, if the two of them entered my parents' house together, does that mean it was approved by my parents-in-law? According to the information he asked about, Dad is going to get married soon. That's why they rebuilt the house. George said. Isn't George's friend too capable? With this much evidence, I can claim compensation and get divorced. Of course, I won't give him the money from selling the high-rise condominium. I made up my mind to start looking for a lawyer. The next weekend, my husband called. "Hey, what do you mean you haven't submitted the divorce papers again?" he said in an unusually irritable tone. "Oh, I'm busy and can't go to the city hall easily." "How did you find out? Are you trying to remarry someone?" When I said that, my husband got even angrier. "What are you talking about? Anyway, if you don't submit the divorce papers quickly, I'll ask a lawyer to divorce you forcibly." It must have hit home. Okay. I just asked a lawyer too. When I said that, my husband's tone changed. Huh? Lawyer? Yes, I think I'm going to ask for compensation. Compensation? For what? My husband seemed to be in a hurry and his voice got louder. For cheating. You cheated every time you went back to your parents' house? How long has it been going on? I sighed. No. That was a high school classmate. He said he divorced and went back to his parents' house and only lasted about 2 years. My husband stopped as if he had realized something when he said that much. Oh, 2 years. A high school classmate. Thank you for the useful information. My husband laughed it off. Oh, yeah, it's been 2 years. But we're getting married soon. So if you don't submit the divorce papers quickly, we'll be in trouble because both parents have agreed. You're talking a lot, but are you okay? Then my husband laughed through his nose. There's no way I'm asking for compensation for cheating. Because if we get divorced, we'll divide our property. Actually, the lawyer has already set his sights on that. The money from selling your high-rise condominium is quite a bit even after dividing our property, so compensation is just a small amount. My husband started saying nonsensical things. Did you rebuild your parents' house with that money? I'm taking out a loan in my name, but if we divide the property, I can change it all at once. I laughed at his excited tone. Are you serious? My father's condominium was sold, but that money is not subject to property division. What? Why? Did neither you nor your parents know that? You're so ignorant. And you're already jumping the gun and rebuilding the house? Unbelievable. I looked at my watch. It was almost time. By the way, Paul, are you at home now? Yeah, why? My husband still sounded confused. Well, I'll be there soon. I heard the intercom over the phone and told my husband to answer it. George. My husband's surprised voice echoed. George had gone to see my husband with a lawyer. He probably had something he wanted to say to him as his son, and he casually said he would also claim damages while he was at it since I had no intention of meeting him. I don't care if you divorce me. I don't have many memories with you anyway. But if you try to take Grandpa's inheritance from Mom, I won't forgive you. I have more memories with Grandpa, Grandma, and Mom than with you. I heard George's voice over the phone. Tears came to my eyes at his words. Afterwards, I claimed damages for my husband's infidelity and we were divorced. It seems that the person who had an affair with him was told that he was divorced and single. And he seems to have been sued for marriage fraud. I heard from George's friend that my in-laws had just finished building their house but were already putting it up for sale. My husband didn't seem to have quit his job, so maybe he moved into the company housing or my in-laws' house. However, it was an old building with a bad reputation for human relationships. Well, it's good that he has a place to live. I hope he works hard. I sold my father's high-rise condominium and bought a well-located condominium with the money. George said he would come see me with his girlfriend this summer because they could see fireworks from there. I imagined attending my son's wedding in the future and was grateful for how much he had grown.